Hello and welcome to the 6 o'clock club. It's Andy here from Twisted Narrative and another very special guest star jumping in at the very last moment. Uh, it's Jack, as you can tell by the name, but introduce yourself, Jack.
Yes. Hello. My name's Jack. I've been a long-standing player in Andy's games, quite a lot of Andy's games. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it as well. It helps to have a little bit of talk, someone to bounce off, especially with my current state of mind as well. Um, I've got a little bit of brain fog that's going on, as Jack experienced a few moments ago. Hello to everybody in chat as you start jumping in there, and hello to everybody that's watching on catch up. Really, really appreciate it all. Um, we'll do the usual really first, which is we'll talk about. Oh, you've gone, Jack.
I have. I'll be
It's
back.
okay.
I am still
No,
here.
no,
Just
no.
camera issues. I'll be back in a minute.
We'll talk about um, last night's game, and we'll talk about the game that we're playing tonight first, and then we'll go on to a general talk about um, playing role-playing games and making it harder, more grueling, either rules-wise or system-wise. Hello, Stuart. Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. So last night's game, well, I didn't run last night, so we don't need to talk about that. So that was short and sweet. Tonight's game, though, provided the players can put up with my inability to string any kind of thoughts together and no taking advantages of me, there's going to be a lot of advantage taking, I know. Um, we are going to be playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and it is a critical role game. We are working our way through Call of the Neverdeep, and Jack is one of the players in there.
I am indeedy. I am indeedy. Um,
Um, yeah, I mean, tell us your thoughts of the game.
it's been so. I think we are 8, 9, 10 episodes in, something like that. And there was the first bit. There was a very nice, very critical role themed sort of introduction to the game, wasn't there? That sort of
Yeah,
spanned over 4 or 5 episodes where it was more just sort of having fun around a fair and sort of just having a little bit of fun with dice and just sort of getting get everyone getting to know one another and sort of very low stakes entertainment. I know you've mentioned it in previous sessions and stuff, but with these things, with it always comes a very sort of critical role feel.
yeah,
Um,
it's. I mean, it's interesting, and I- I run an awful lot of games. I run an awful lot of sort of books that are published and homebrew stuff, and you can kind of tell this. I don't want to say he's got Matt Mercer's influence with it. Obviously, he wrote it, but it's got his influence with it. It
Definitely.
feels really nice. Hiya, Michael. Thanks for joining us. Um, it most definitely encourages role playing. Now, I don't mean other games don't do that, but I mean interpersonal role playing amongst the group and amongst NPCs as well. I don't particularly want to spoil it because I mean the problem that I've got here is it's a published book. And if we go through what has happened so far, it's potentially going to be spoilers for people.
Yeah.
I know the book's been out for a very long time, but even so, we don't want to ruin people's enjoyment of it. But it's a fantastic group of players. Michael, who's just jumped into chat, is one of them. And I mean, it's got this very nice narrative and this gentle sort of feel. Everything that you encounter somewhat feels like um, there's a reason for it to be there. That it's not like, oh, this is just a sort of random encounter, as far as I'm concerned. You've just got to kind of an important place, really, and I think it was. I,
Yes.
I think all of you basically said. at the end of it, oh, we're getting the lore now.
Yes, things are
Um,
starting to unravel a little bit, aren't
yeah,
they,
yeah,
as we progress?
of what is going on. So tonight's session should be very interesting.
Definitely.
And I don't want to say much more about it really, because there's a lot that could potentially happen tonight. So we'll wait and see really. I am very, very excited about it though. I have
Yes,
to
me
say,
too.
very excited. And that will be going off at 7 o'clock. But earlier today in our Discord channel, Jack posted a few sort of ideas and questions of subject matters that we could perhaps talk about tonight, and that spurred me to say, well, hey, why don't you jump on? So it's not just me waffling for half an hour and ask the questions in person, and we'll have conversation about it, because that's what these 6 o'clock clubs are designed to be, really. And if you in chat have got any ideas as well, shout up and we'll try and involve you in the conversation as well. So what was the question or questions?
So I think it's more of like sort of like a broader topic. So what
Yeah.
what spurred it on is so I'm listening to a new so one of the new Dimension 20 podcasts at the moment, Never After.
Yeah.
They're playing with just an interesting homebrew rule.
Hmm.
So the homebrew rule that they're playing is essentially every time that you take damage as a player that exceeds half of your current hit points, you need to make a con save. And on a failure of that, you instantly get a point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
So obviously something that's in there to make sort of realism or make things harder or something like that, and then sort of that triggered another. The only other sort of variant rule that I know of that is something that exists in the Dungeon Master's Guide, called gritty realism.
Hmm.
So this is where they change the sort of parameters of resting. So a long rest rather than just being sort of 8 hours sleep changes to 7 full days of downtime.
Yeah.
Anything other than that is just considered for the sake of sort of mechanics a short rest. So you could 8 hours if it's not 7 days of downtime is just for the rules of the short rest. So the question that I posted in the Discord today was, I guess, what your experience is around homebrew rules that specifically make things harder for players. So
Yeah.
if that's something that you've potentially done or considered, or what you needed to sort of change or adapt as part of making these sort of the things, just like I think, as you put it, in hard mode, what your experience has been in that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, and it raises a ton of different questions, which I'll go through in a minute. So first and foremost, absolutely, I've done it. Um, but I've done it in a number of different ways, and I think there's a very much a danger um, if you don't communicate with your players first about this. You can
Mm.
really skew the player's experience from it.
Yeah.
I'm not. You never know. There might be someone sort of an inspired sort of dungeon master here that goes, "Oh, that sounds really cool. I'm going to do this." If you don't discuss it from your players, you can really, really disrupt their experience of what
Yeah.
they were expecting. It's perfect from a session zero to discuss these things. Um, just be open with your players first and foremost. That said, you can do it for a small sort of story arc, 1 or 2 sessions, and I'll come on to that in a minute as well. I probably won't. I've got brain fog. I'll forget everything that's going on. Who am I? Oh, I've got my name underneath me. That's quite useful. So first and foremost, the big question is, why would I want to do that with Dungeons and Dragons? Is Dungeons and Dragons a game designed for that kind of experience? And the simple answer is yes and no. Um, there are probably better systems out there to play a gritty game, but that doesn't stop players still wanting the fifth ed experience. People are familiar with it. People are familiar with the way the characters develop. So my overall statement is kind of sitting on the fence a bit, but I think it's an important one. Whatever's fun at your table is relevant to your
Yeah.
table. You want to play fifth ed, you want to change the rules to make it gritty, absolutely go for it. Don't worry about someone else saying, well, I'll play this system instead, like
Mm.
Merc, Borg. You know, it's a grim and gritty system. You
Yeah.
don't want to do that. You want to play fifth ed. There's no problem with homebrewing and changing something that you are familiar and happy with. But if you are sort of open to other experiences, there are other experiences out there. But the specific question, I think, from you, Jack, was about playing fifth ed and
Hmm.
turn it into a grittier
Definitely.
game. So I'll come on to that. So I've done it a few times, and it's worked all the times that I've done it. Um, the 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 main one of making it harder mid campaign is when there is a switch of locations. I
Mm.
mean, they I mean, I might be giving you some spoilers here, Jack. Jack's character in the Icebreakers game is attempting to move across to the Shadowfell, and let's talk about the Shadowfell because the way I run the Shadowfell is it is harder. Um, so all healing effects are halved first and
Oh,
foremost.
crikey.
So you can still heal people, but the healing effects are reduced by 50%. So you know if you heal for 8 points, it's only healed for
Mm.
4, showing that it's closer to the negative plane. Um, Also, hit die returns slower. So when you rest, you will get hit dice back, but not at the same rate. Hi there, Elsa. Light itself is reduced, so lighting effects are reduced by 50% as well. Um, and there are one or two other things that I've done to. There's rules for torment basically. The overwhelming weight of despair within the Shadowfell can start affecting the players' minds. Um, it makes it really good for one or two sessions where players can go, "Wow, this
Mm.
is cool. This is different. I'm enjoying playing this." If you if you carry on like that, it does become just depressing, and characters sort of go, I never want to return to that plane of existence ever again. And I kind of feel like I've done my work there. But there is a balance between making it different and exciting for the characters when they first arrive, and then not making it frustrating by extending it out too long as well. Um, so so that is one way that I've kind of done it with those rules. Um, Michael has said we saw a bit of this when you were near a rift of the plane. Yeah, the light things was unsettling. Absolutely. And sometimes it's fun to catch your players out like that, as long as it's not an extended experience, because you know Dungeons and Dragons Fifth Ed in its purest form is high fantasy superheroes. I mean, the, they are superheroes. Even a first level character compared to the general populace is is very
Yeah.
very powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you get up to sort of the mid tier and the high tiers, compared to the rest of the world, the general populace, you are superheroes. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's the experience that players, I assume, want
Sign up
by
for.
playing
Yeah.
that system. And if you take that away from them permanently, it can feel like, well, I'm not playing the game I want to play anymore. Um, so but a Susan of that, let's go to the Shadowfell. Oh, this is awful. We'll never come in here again. Um, and you can play around with it. I think it was Pandemonium is another one that I played around with the rules, and the idea of these other planar experiences. having tangible effects on the abilities and skills of players can make them completely different and make them feel like, wow, this is another reality, rather than packing your sandwiches in your picnic basket and going to the nine hells for a jolly. It's like, no, we don't like it here. Um, can we leave now, please? So that's the first thing that I did. I also ran a complete campaign that was low fantasy D&D, if that is such a thing. Um, it was called Eisern Faust. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that properly. I am because I invented it. But Eisern is German for iron, and Faust is German for fist. So it's kind of Iron Fist, basically. Um, and I've ran this campaign now, so there's no spoilers for the players that were in it. Um, but we did a session 0. I promoted this game not as a fifth ed game, but a game where you start on 0 levels. The characters started out without character classes. Um, Everybody needed to be human. So it was like, this is going to be a low fantasy campaign using 5th edition. And they started off with some basic skills. I think one person was someone that tended the peat and turned it into sort of a fuel for the little settlement they was in. Magic was outlawed, but there was kind of like the hints of supernatural and the like. So people were normal fundamentally. Um, and as they played a couple of sessions, doing the things that they were exploring and doing, set the classes that they were playing in. And uncovering a forbidden page of magic would perhaps lead one of them into the wizard class. Fending and defending the village from sort of wolves would perhaps make them into a fighter, stealing something. But the whole game world was dominated by the church and the Inquisition. Um, People who play my games know that this is a very, very common thread that I quite like. And the Eisenfaust, the fist was designed to be like that. Um, and it was an interesting and um, fun experience. The campaign, as it developed, they actually discovered the reason why there was all these caps was that they weren't playing a medieval game. They were in a post-apocalyptic future. The church had ancient technologies and were protecting um, protecting their civilians because belief had become tangible, which is how we um, represented magic. So the populace was controlled through law and thought by the church, so they didn't think of bad things and they didn't sin, because if they sinned, they would feed um, belief and thoughts to these entities that were the embodiment of sins that laid outside of these territories. And the players eventually went on a journey to discover all of this, and that was quite interesting and quite a lot of reveals. But the game had to start, without any kind of magic or anything else, and the the healing rules and everything else was very much as you discussed with, it took a longer time to get your resources back, um, until they basically discovered that positive thought could empower them, and then we transferred it, so it was almost a reversal, starting off in this hardcore mode and then eventually finding their powers, as it were, really. So yeah, that was interesting, and then we could use old technologies which was new technologies in that game as well, as it became a little bit of a Fallout type game.
Yeah.
But that took a lot of planning and a lot of open conversation. There was a lot of spoilers in there that they didn't know, but we needed players on board that wanted to start off at level 0, realised that they were developing their characters, and it was an interesting premise, basically.
Yeah, because I think like like you said, I think that ultimately the biggest thing here is getting everybody on board, isn't it? You know, if you threw something like gritty realism or something like that at players who haven't necessarily signed up for that, I think that's what the session 0 is there for with this kind of thing. Just making sure that everyone's on board, and I think a lot of people, I think even myself included, would be interested in just seeing what that looks like. I think when I posted that question to you earlier, when I was trying to think about how that would lay out, I think what I was thinking of, my biggest concern would be things like how you would balance encounters, especially if I'm using things like gritty realism or whatever as an example. Because there are, if you just took D&D as it was and just said, right, we're now using the gritty realism variant, I think one of the biggest disparities potentially would be the difference in classes and their reliance on short and long rests, because obviously you've got spellcasters and who already have to deal with sort of resource management, and now they've got to deal with things that potentially they could be going many in-game days without having long rests, and there are things like fighters or whoever are sort of more short rest reliant, and and when they're rolling hit dice, obviously they're rolling it, they're getting more back. So how would you look to balance an interesting encounter?
I mean, it's very much an interesting sort of subject, really. I mean, 5th edition is a resource management game, and more so, as you say, for casters than fighters. But fighters again have hit dice that were going down if they're tanking and stuff. And the way that it's really designed to play optimally, i.e., the rule set working, is for a group of 4 players, and you should fundamentally have a number of encounters before you need a short rest, and then a number more encounters before you have another short rest, then a number of encounters before you have a long rest. Those encounters should be fairly easy to start off with and nibble away at your resources. The reality is, to do it in that way, you need longer than 3 hours. And now you could do that over several sessions, but I don't believe you would get the, oh, that was a good session. As you kind of doing minor things as your
That's very
resources
true.
are slowly kind of coming down, until you would be extending in effect a day to 3 or 4 sessions to do that realistically. But I think with um, the sort of hardcore rules where you have a long rest, basically after a week, you basically technically get the results of a long rest. You could easily then set these encounters up, sort of 7 days, 7 encounters, and then you have that long rest, which makes it a little bit more realistic as well, if you see what I mean. There was a discussion between Matt Mercer and is it Brendan from Dimension 20?
Think so.
Yeah. And they were not talking about this, but they were talking about milestone versus experience.
Yes, I did see. So yes, that was Brendan Lee Mulligan who just the difference
And
between the
it's
two.
absolutely right. Players, characters, they start off, day one with their sort of, I've got my longsword and my crappy little bit of armor, and within a week they are now demigods, and it's like, the rest of the world is it is moving along at a slow pace. And I think they said, this poor archmage that has been studying this elf, has been studying for 500 years, and he's only technically challenge rated 9. And like these upstarts have just turned up.
Yes, to come back and they're now champions of the realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is the nature of fifth edition. The players, their characters are the protagonists of the story. They do this crazy stuff, and it's down to the GM to pace it. And there's nothing wrong with having an extended mega dungeon where they go down, and at the end of it they return as these champions, or doing it as we often do, kind of over an extended period of time. I tend to story arc um, the way that the characters level up. So there's a story arc from level 1 to 5, another one from 5 to 10, and then another one from 10 to 15, and then a final one from 15 to 20. And there can be a linked narrative between all of those story arcs. Um, um, but fifth edition is very difficult, I think, to nerf, because you take away the cool things about it away.
Yeah, definitely.
There is very much a strange argument that when you've only got 3 hours to run a session in, players, and I mean players, not characters, know, well, okay, we're midway through the 3 hours. We're most likely going to have a short rest or a long rest after this. I'm going to do what is technically called novering, and vroom, 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 those superpowers come out, and it's devastating for the poor encounter.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. The idea of playing fifth edition is all about being these superhero fantasy characters. Um, um, if someone was interested in running, or not running, but playing in a fifth edition campaign with using kind of more gritty rules, I'd more than happily run it. I have done in the past. It's a different experience. Um, and like I said before, it's well worth considering other systems, because I mean there are so many out there. Well, I mean, I know we've mentioned Pathfinder. That isn't one that I would use in this circumstance, but one that is very close to my heart, and I've played and GM'd in an awful lot, is Warhammer Fantasy. The old world of Warhammer is grim and gritty, and designed for that purpose. Um, Sorry,
So
Jack.
would that be your if someone asked you, I suppose, I'm looking for something a bit grittier,
Yeah,
would that be your number one solution then in terms
it
of
depends on what they want. If they wanted an
mm,
alternative to D&D, but they wanted, I call it Ridley Scott, because most of his movies are full of rain. It's just like constantly pouring with rain in his movies. And the Warhammer world is just, it's mud. It's kind of, you play rat catchers.
yeah,
But there is that fantasy element in there. I love that European dark fantasy that it kind of replicates, basically. If you wanted something that is kind of death metal and apocalyptic, then we've mentioned Mork Borg already.
yes, very
Um,
keen on doing that.
and there's quite a lot of these original sort of role-playing game sort of simulators that simulate early sort of Dungeons and Dragons, back in the day. And they do a very good job at that, very much so. Um, Quite often, though, those ones tend to, it pitches the players against the problem rather than the characters. The It's very rare that the characters themselves can resolve through their own skills the problems they come across. Quite often you have to, as a player, think about everything you've got and then speak to all of the other players and kind of pool your resources to come up with a clever solution. I mean, there are old TV programs like the Adventure Game,
Mm.
um, and more modern day experiences like escape rooms that those dungeons, those style of dungeons, kind of are not based on, but have kind of spawned that kind of puzzle solving, really. Um, very much with a lot of the creatures, it's like, okay, we know we can't defeat this creature because it's too tough for us. What bits of the environment can we use? Can we call down that stalactite to pierce it? Um, and it is that kind of thought process that is very different to sort of modern day role playing. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know that. Michael has just said it's Grim up north and south and east and west. WFRP. That's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Um, I like that. He also said that that's where he thinks Dungeon of the Madden Wage works well, where you can find a safe place even for a short rest. Yeah,
Yes.
mega dungeons can be dangerous. Absolutely. Um, and it's kind of an interesting experience to do. But I mean, I'm going to turn the tables on you a little bit, Jack, and say what promoted the question, or rather, um, do you fancy giving something like that a go?
I, yes. So the short answer is yeah. I think I've always been interested in, obviously because I'm in quite a lot of
Yeah,
in your games, in just in these sort of variations that maybe add not necessarily realism but just different areas of challenge to them. I did really like the rule that, like I said, that's in Neverraster in terms of taking a point of exhaustion, just because from a flavor
yeah,
standpoint, it just makes a lot of sense as well as anything else.
yeah,
So Brendan Lee Mulligan also does it for the sort of the enemies that you're facing as well. So the players can inflict points of exhaustion if they're doing the same thing. Um, it definitely adds that element of maybe thinking a bit more tactically.
yeah,
I've kind of, like I said, I kind of like it from the element of, if you were to take, half of your hit points, that's going to hurt, and,
yeah,
and and having that represented via a point of exhaustion, or whoever that looks like, I quite like that mechanic.
yeah,
Not maybe not necessarily looking to go to go full hard mode. I think the gritty realism, if we move to sort of that sort of 7 day long resting, I think it would kind of feel like two very different games built into one for me. So
yeah,
you'd have your downtime game where, what do you want to do these 7 days, X, Y, and Z, and then you'd have your sort of, right, now we're off on an adventure type of game. And so I think I was interested in asking that an original question in terms of how you would run that
yeah.
from a
You
from
s
a
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would run it that way though, where you have 7 days of kind of waiting around so you can get your long rest. What you would
because
be
I think,
doing
yeah,
is you would be adventuring,
yeah.
and because hit points aren't that they're just a
Yes.
representation
Yeah, exactly.
of um, of um, of many things in the
Yeah.
past, certainly in early editions. It doesn't represent how you've been cut apart.
No.
It can represent your ability to dodge out of the
Mm.
way. I mean, you're being hit. It's only that final hit point, and to be perfectly honest, then the death saves that count basically.
Yes.
Um, and it just means that, a barbarian with rage is not got more physical flesh and bone that they have to cut through to cut them down, but
Mm.
he's just battle hardened,
Yeah.
and he's parrying with shields and whatever. And um, so the loss of hit points through those 7 days would happen um, over time.
Yeah.
And it would be sort of like, wow, we've gone a week. We really need to sort of patch
Have a lie
ourselves
down.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would still be having rests every night and doing
Mm,
camp, and I would say that they would be your short rests in
yeah.
a grittier game. Um,
Yeah.
so you could only really spend your hit dice when you get a short rest. So you have to decide whether I don't want to do that yet. I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it throws out a completely different dynamic to healing as well. Does your
Definitely.
priest just do it instantly, or do they do over
Something like a
time?
prayer of healing
Um,
or whatever.
it would make Goodberry very strong every
It
day.
would.
Everybody could get some food and get that one hit point back. That would be really useful as well. But there are certain things that you can do as a GM, like make healing potions much more available and make
Yes.
sure
Yeah.
that people have got them. Um,
Yeah. Because I
so
think that's interesting, obviously, because I think that's potentially the trap that people would fall into. You said you would obviously manage it, not necessarily a 7 week holiday and then
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
a
7 day holiday.
7 day holiday. But I think that's potentially a trap that people could fall into would be right. We've got 7 days of downtime, then 7 days of adventuring, and it would feel just sort of like a little downtime mini
Yeah,
game. I did sort of quite like in terms of, like you said, because hit points are just representative of how many sort of hits you can
it's your
take, and I think that's
survivability
yes,
basically.
yeah, and I think that, like I said, and I think that's why quite like this sort of point of exhaustion
Yeah, yeah,
homebrew rule that they're playing, because just from a sort of flavor standpoint rather than anything just mechanical, the idea of
yeah,
taking that down to halfway is going to sort of have a sort of a mental effect rather than just
yeah,
as much
yeah.
as physical as well, isn't it?
No, exhaustion is the GM's best friend. You've got some players and they like, yeah, I can do anything now. There are certain ways, and you can homebrew certain ways of
Mm,
ensuring that players suddenly get exhausted. And yeah, of course, it can be removed through restorations and that kind of thing. But the number of times I've seen fairly cocky characters going, yeah, no, I could. What? Oh, that's 2 levels of exhaustion. Okay, yeah, I'm out of
take
here.
a step back. Yeah,
It's one of the few mechanics in fifth edition that hits hard and
yeah,
fast,
definitely.
very,
Yeah.
very rapidly. A great leveler. I mean, there are other things as well, like a Banshee's Scream, and there's a couple of other. No, you fail your saving throw, you go to 0 hit points.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's just like, but I had 300 hit points because I'm a barbarian and I rage and it's like, well, you don't have any anymore. Okay, and what's interesting then is like how we're going to heal him up to full
Yes.
because they've got so many. Uh,
Yeah. Those kind of that kind of can make it things very interesting, can't they? Because I remember, I don't want to give away too many
yeah,
spoilers, but during the Frost Maiden game that
yeah,
we played, we at that point we were very high level in that campaign, and we're about to go face a certain enemy, and everyone was sort of ready to go, and then this thing does something which drops
yeah,
half the party down to 0 hit points
yeah,
on round one, and then suddenly is everything goes out of the window, doesn't it?
yeah.
And that I think that's how, especially when, like you said, especially when you reach in high levels and just a sort of head to head hitting stuff back and forwards, usually sort of the players are going to sort of come out the better of that. So I suppose it's just trying to find ways to sort of, either
Yeah,
it's legendary actions or exhaustion or whatever, and ways to sort of level the playing field.
yeah, it's an interesting one. Michael said, "How do we feel about players not knowing things like that's the last legendary resistance a monster has, or not knowing if it's made and made its failed, not knowing if people have made their failed death saves. It would give encounters different feels." Michael also says paralysis hits are auto crits.
Mm.
Great to be on the right side. Horrendous to see it happening to you.
Yes.
No, no, I
Right.
mean absolutely. Um, First and foremost, I've said this numerous times. I'm on the side of the players. I celebrate their successes and mourn their losses, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But part of my job is to thrill and excite and to challenge, and there are some sort of toolbox tricks that I like to keep up my sleeve. um,
Yes.
um, uh, you're perfectly right, Michael, about it's not metagaming. People know the rules, and there can be a lot to be said for some people like to play the game tactically and to pull the rug out of them when they believe the rules are saying one thing and
Mm.
you literally change the rules like a dragon should have 3 legendary resistances and you bang it up to 5 or something like that. It's a perfectly acceptable thing for a GM to do, especially if they do it pre the encounter. It's slightly more dubious doing it during an encounter.
Yeah.
But what I would do in those circumstances is uh, foreshadow it. I would say, as they are moving towards this creature, as they kind of exploring information and gathering intelligence on this creature is different to a normal red dragon, ancient red dragon. This one is a named, this is the Cinder King. And you can kind of foreshadow that perhaps this is stronger than, um, a traditional monster from the monster manual.
Mm.
And I think that's a good way of doing it. Because even if you haven't changed it, the players think you have, and therefore they're a little bit more uncertain about what they wish to do. Um, I thought we saw. There you go. You just disappeared. I think
Oh,
you might have
yes.
done that. No, no, not you.
Oh,
Skill Gannon here. Skill Gannon plays in our Saturday game, and I'm really looking forward to this. Hopefully, you can make it. Um, don't forget to let us know if you haven't already. And he mentions another player in that game, Wayne, who never tries to bend the rules. No, I mean, to be fair to Wayne, he doesn't try and bend the rules, but he likes to optimize his characters. And
mm.
seriously, there's nothing wrong with that. I
No,
mean,
no.
um, it is the GM's remit to not tell players they can't do those things, especially if they are rules as written.
Yeah, definitely.
It's their job to go embrace that, change the challenge ratings of the creatures, make it
Yeah,
exciting so they get to do the cool stuff that they should be able to do because it
it's
is
in the
in
rules.
in the
Yeah.
rules. To say, "Oh no, we're not using that rule anymore," is it's I don't I would much rather do something about that than to remove it.
Definitely.
That is my opinion really.
Yeah.
And
And
there's sorry, Jack, you was going to say.
yeah, no, I think especially I think what you were talking about in just terms of sort of the players understanding and how they run it. When in the games that I've run, the one sort of the only homebrew variant rule that I run is death saves are run by me as the DM behind the table.
Yeah,
Because and I a lot of I suppose you could argue that obviously it takes away agency from the players, but what I quite enjoy is sort of, sometimes I mean I can even be guilty of it as well. So I'm only on one failure, I'm only on one success. Don't worry about me on this round.
mm,
You can come back around, and what I quite like is saying, right, it's up to you. I'll roll the dice, obviously, always just as honest as I can, and say, yeah, that's it, and then move on to the sort of the next person. So it, I'll obviously try and describe it,
yeah,
the character as they're bleeding out or whatever. But I think it adds like a nice little element of
it
danger and
does.
also sort of stops that level of metagaming that I think everyone can be guilty of. And like I said, myself included in that.
You can't get around. Well, I mean, you can get around it by doing things, but at the end of the day, it's a game and it's designed for fun. If if it's affecting the nature of the game, I do a homebrew rule about death fails, not disappearing, um, and that's because basically what was happening because the rules allow it to happen, is characters were letting themselves be reduced to 0 hit points, and all of the healing was being saved till after a character was downed.
Yes.
Because it's obviously far more optimal to get a character just back up with your
Yes.
healing spells. Now, I didn't do that because I was bothered about it. I did it because literally poor priests, healers, people who wanted to heal, and I'm
Yeah.
playing the game so I can actively stop you from dying.
Yeah.
Was being, you can't do that. Don't do that yet. Save your
Yeah.
resources.
Just wait for me till I go
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, stop spoiling their fun, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you can do it, but if you get a death fail, it stays on until you take a long rest,
Yeah.
which
Which
suddenly
makes sense.
means I don't want a death fail, because next time I go down, I might get another one.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very good idea.
And overnight it just changed. Oh yeah, keep me on my feet. Um,
Yeah.
Skill says hello to me and nice to meet you, Jack. This is
Oh,
I'll call him by his name. His what's the name? His handle, Skill Gannon. But he's saying very nice. Michael quickly says rules adding more weight to role playing to things like revivification and other life saving spells are also good. Absolutely, there's a ton of things that people never bother to take because these conditions don't really sort of come up. But when they come up, they are a godsend, literally, normally, because they're divine,
yeah.
and they can change the nature of the game.
Yeah, revivication. So Matt Mercer runs slightly altered rules with revivication,
Yeah.
and that require in
Or
terms of
yeah,
a bit more role playing involved as well. That revolves, it's about the PCs talking to the person to will their soul back into the body.
yeah,
That
yeah.
requires talking, rolling dice. I think that's a nice addition to
I
Revivify.
think it's key. And to be perfectly honest, before Matt Mercer
Oh, was it?
publicly did it, before he
Okay.
publicly did it, I'm not going to say he did it first, but I'm older than him, so I probably did it first.
So I really like when Andy Leach did
Yeah,
did
yeah,
this.
yeah. No,
This
I mean,
Revivify talk.
I hate the idea of like someone dying, the character dying, and everybody's
Mm,
just like, "Bruh, it's okay. Here's some gold. Vroom, you're up."
yeah,
It,
yeah,
uh, I've got nothing wrong with it mechanically, um, but it means that characters aren't invested in
yeah.
their character, and
It's just like getting an extra life in a video game,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think you lose a lot of potential role-playing experience not to be able to try and do something emotive to bring
Mm,
the character back.
definitely.
Um,
And it might not be one for today because I know we're sort of running short on time, but I
yeah,
think another, maybe another one for that is how you sort of deal with things like, PC deaths, or what you think is a sort of a nice idea, or how you would like to see it, or how you
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of play a character deaths and stuff. I'd be very interested in.
It's indeed another good subject. I'll make a note of that. But you are right, Jack. We have waffled on, and it is only 10 minutes before our call of the Neverdeep game. So I want to say a big thank you to Jack for joining us and raising some interesting questions there and creating conversation, which is what the 6 o'clock club is all
Yeah,
about.
thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
having me.
everybody joining us. Thank you for watching if you're watching on catch up. Um, if you haven't already, please give us a cheeky subscribe and like. It really makes a big difference to us. Um, and we'll be back tomorrow, same time, 6 o'clock. In the meantime, have a great evening. Look after yourselves, and I'll be telling you what happened in tonight's game tomorrow. For now, stay safe, everybody, and look after each other. Bye for now.
Right.